thank you. Can you hear me okay in there?
We've got you great. Thanks, sir.
Great, terrific. And Shelley, I'm sorry I was not there for you. For the audience and for the people who are being recorded, I hope you got a great deal out of Shelley's talk. I will say publicly that she is doing, in my opinion, a terrific job in sharing Dakowitz, and Dakowitz is a very important committee. I'm very pleased to be here today. I think my talk will be different. I can't possibly cover some of the research topics, although I watched some of them yesterday, and I thought the point that was made about Title IX was fascinating. But I'm going to try to give you kind of my perspective and an evolution of how I have seen the acceptance and integration of women in the military, and at the same time say we have to go faster, we have to be better, and give you some of my viewpoints. I'm hopeful that out of this conference, symposium, will come some concrete suggestions that the department can act on in areas beyond just gear and kit. We know that that is a problem for women. I will tell you, I'm 6'5" and in the 98th percentile in size, so I do have some sympathy because I can't go in and get equipment that fits me either. So I would like to provide some context. I came on active duty, and you can do the math if you want to, in 1976. And I apologize for not being there, but running 35 years on 70-year-old knees just sometimes doesn't work. I came on active duty to a Strategic Air Command base, Mather Air Force Base in California. I will note that neither Mather nor SAC still exist. But in the mid-1970s, when I entered active duty, 2% of the enlisted force and about 4% of the officer force were women. Many career fields, most career fields, were closed to women. It was not until September 1977 that the first 10 Air Force women pilots earned their wings. I will note that that came about 4 years after the Navy, regrettably. Those women were only allowed to fly in KC-135 tankers, C-130 supply planes, C-9s, or C-141s. That's very restrictive. So a young officer who wanted to come in and fly fighters was not allowed to do it. Out of that first class of 10 women, 2 came to Mather, and I had the great pleasure of becoming friends with one of them, First Lieutenant Sandy Scott, a really, really fine officer. She was assigned to the bomb wing. Back then, in bomb wings, 1 week out of every 3, all the air crews would have to go live at the alert shack at the end of the runway. Sandy was the only woman in the alert shack at that time. And she and I talked about how hard that was and how she had to change her personality to fit in. Didn't seem right to me. I will note that none of those first 10 pilots were academy grads because the academies did not open up until the class of 1980. The numbers were not good. In the Air Force, out of 1,500 cadets, 157 were women, 97 graduated. The Army was about the same, with 119 women cadets in the first class and 62 graduated. So it was hard, and it was very hard on the women and females coming into the service. I will compare those numbers to today, and now coming into the academies, roughly 80% of the entering cadets graduate. So we're doing better. I showed up at my first squadron command, and I note that I know Shelley's husband was Army. I was an Air Force guy who had my command on the ground in Germany with combat arms. Out of my squadron of about 130 people, I was authorized only one position that could be female. Think about that. Everything else was closed. And what was bizarre to me was my female was my squadron admin NCO. Her name was Diane Huckmeyer from North Dakota, all 6'2" of her, and she was stronger and more physically fit than just about 90% of the guys in my unit. I watched that and I thought, we have to do better. So those 2 examples helped shape my worldview. Fast forward to the mid-90s. In my War College class of about 130, we had Janet Wolfenbarger, former chair of Dakowitz, and Ellen Polakowski, both of whom ended up as four-star officers. There have only been 10 four-star women in the DoD history. 2 of them were in my War College class. We also had Kathy Close, Sandy Gregory, Polly Pyre, and a couple of other women who ended up as generals. So in that period of 15 years, I did see a change in acceptance, and that's a good thing. Fast forward to today. A fairly good friend of mine is Lieutenant General retired Orville Wright. That's not his real first name. His real first name is Bruce, but if your last name is Wright, you're going to get a call sign of Orville. Orville was a fighter pilot in the classic sense, the old school, really, really superior guy. In Orville's office, he has one picture. It's a picture of his daughter and some of her friends. His daughter was the first female fighter pilot in Afghanistan, and the picture is a collection of women fighter pilots from all the NATO and allied nations who get together periodically to just share stories, have a good time, do what fighter pilots do. Orville's daughter is a fighter pilot in every sense of the word, and that's the good side of the story. Both she and her husband have been early promoted. Orville's daughter, her and her husband, have been early promoted to colonel. Both are on the glide slope to be wing commanders of fighter wings and become general officers. The downside is they have some small children, have to figure out how are they going to manage the demands of small children with 2 wing commanders. And when I talked to Orville, he said it's not fair and it's hard. I don't have solutions, but those are the things that we have to address as a Department of Defense to keep the best and the brightest, both men and women, in. So why all the musings about 50 years of history? The numbers of women in the armed forces has climbed to about 14% of the enlisted force and 16% of the officers. Is that good? Probably not. Probably not where we need it to be. We have to be better about opening it up. In case anybody noticed, we are in a competition with China. And that competition of China, they have 1.3 billion people. We have 320, 330 some odd million. I contend that every American has to have the opportunity to serve the nation, and we have to do better bringing in underrepresented groups. So our America's strength lies in its diversity of thoughts and ideas. I firmly believe that. And you get a lot of diversity, not just with women, but other underrepresented groups. So what are we going to do about it? I would like to commend people to pull down an article written by another fairly good friend of mine, General Lori Robinson, in 2020. Lori was the first combatant commander female. She commanded NORTHCOM. And this article, written for Brookings Institute, is called Women Warriors, the ongoing story of integrating and diversifying the American Armed Forces. It's a very, very good article. She talks about, and she points out that how far the women have come, but then she has a statement. Let me make sure I have this right. She points out that is the United States military a leading or lagging organization with regard to gender equity? Should the leadership be proud of what it has done to date, or be prodded to do much better? General Robinson concluded that both questions, the answers are mixed, and I agree with her. The armed forces have come a long way in the last few decades, but it is hardly time to spike the football in the end zone. We're not there yet. So what are some of the limitations? General Robinson points out that while the numbers have increased, the number of flag officer positions are coming up, but not really. And I wanted to check that. So in the last couple of weeks, the department has announced 116 flag officer assignments. That's generals and admirals. Only 20 were women. So we're still not there, and we still, although we have the first chief of naval operations, 4-star commander of a service, in Lisa Franchetti, we have Admiral Linda Fagan, the commandant of the Coast Guard. We have representatives, but we're still not filling in the bench. And we have to take a look at that and figure out why that is. General Robinson had some suggestions, and I think these are really important. First, recruit from a broader pool of America. In 2018, 60% of Army recruits come from military families, which are still predominantly male. We have to do better about reaching out to all segments of America. Second, while we should not and cannot lower standards for entry, we need to think about better models for bringing people in. When the Army was having a hard time bringing in enough recruits who were physically fit enough, the Army came up with a new program. You wouldn't enter directly into basic training, but rather go to a physical fitness camp first to enhance your standards. I think that's an important model. We have to look at how do we do things better. By the way, that for the engineers in the audience, the same thing works in universities. I commend you to look at Freeman Hrabowski, Dr. Hrabowski, who just retired as the president of University of Maryland, Baltimore campus. He noted that engineers were underrepresented in America in diversity. So he created a program for inner city kids and said, why don't we give you the skills you need first before you enter the basic university program? Freeman Hrabowski's program is graduating about 90% of the African American engineers who start. So I think that's a pretty remarkable story. The military needs to think of the same way. How do we create different pathways for a more diverse set of people to enter? Just because someone doesn't have the prerequisite skills when they're recruited, that should not make them unqualified for service. We just have to figure out how to get them up there. General Robinson also states a barrier felt more by women than men is having a family. To quote General Robinson, it remains hard to have a family while in the military, and this is even more true for women given the realities of biology. We should not give up on these women, and we should think about different pathways. One thing that General Robinson suggests, and I think is a terrific idea, why can't we have women take a break in service if they want to raise their kids until their kids are ready for a little bit older? We don't have that model in the military. You come in the military, you have to stay in. We need to create pathways where people take breaks. Both men and women take breaks when something happens in their life. So I fully agree with that. We need to highlight better where the military embodies the ideal of America, and I think they do. I'm very proud to have worn the uniform for 24 years. I'm very proud to have served my country for nearly 50 years. I can't think of a better thing to do, but we have a competition. We have to do better. By the way, I will say that a similar story, and it's another very good article in the Miami Herald, interviews General Jackie Van Ovost, who's the commander of the Mobility Command, Transcom, and Army General Laura Richardson, who is the commander of U.S. Southcom. So we have two more four-star women in combatant command leadership positions. They both said that the military life is hard, but they had options and opportunities to do things that they hadn't previously had been able to do. General Van Ovost talks about when she came out of the Air Force Academy, she couldn't fly fighters. She found a different path. She went to test pilot school. General Richardson was faced with the same problem. In the Army, you don't progress to flag officer without having battalion brigade command. General Richardson was one of the first commanders of an attack helicopter squadron in Iraq. And General Richardson said she faced her career with a series of questions. How am I going to do this? Am I qualified to do this? How am I going to do all of this? And then just go ahead and do the best of your ability. It worked out pretty well for her. I think those questions are good for any of us. So, and that would be men, women, engineers, non-engineers, all the above. You were very fortunate, I think, to hear Shelley Stoneman's talk. Unfortunately, we had technical difficulties, so I have to go back and watch it. The theme of this conference is amplifying women's combat capabilities. I would have preferred amplifying America's combat capabilities through diversification of the force, addressing women issues, because we have to diversify the entire force, and I look forward to helping do that. We have come a long way with regard to women issues. We're starting to make headway into equipment and gear, but I can tell you we have a long way to go. We have to make sure that we provide safe and secure environments for children of all deployed service members. And as General Robinson points out, this is more acute for women. Finally, we need to continue to encourage and support activities like Air Mobility's Command's Reach Athena, and Air Force Women's Initiative Team. Those are very important because through those two initiatives, collections of women come together and identify issues. I wish I could tell you I understood all the issues that are facing women. I do not. I cannot. I never could. I've mentored a number of women, but I always find other women to help mentor other women. You need to, as women in the military, bring issues forward that we can address. Until the issues are brought forward, they may be obvious to you, but they may not be obvious to everybody in the military. You heard Shelley talk about getting to see and sit with the service chiefs. I have no doubt the service chiefs want to have a more diverse force with better pathways for all Americans. So I encourage you with this conference to talk about issues that affect women's combat capabilities and readiness, and then make suggestions and bring them forward so people can start to think about how to act on it. I have no doubt that Dakowitz will act on suggestions that come forward. I have no doubt that our service chiefs and vice chiefs will act on things as they come forward. So make this the opportunity to identify the issues that are most important to you. And with that, I don't know if I have time for questions. I don't know how much we have blown the schedule. But that's kind of the random nuisance from a guy who's been around this for a long time. Are there any questions?
No. Well, we do have one. All right, I'll take one. Fine.
Sir, thank you so much. I guess my question is, while we have you up there, what can we do as leaders to get men to show up to events like this, to realize that it's their amplification of knowledge, it's their resource, and they're just not coming?
You know, I wish I knew, because I think that's a really important question. I find that within the military, the more senior men, of course, they don't have much time, but are more in tune with the total force. I would go out and, so this is going to be a very weak answer. Go out and ask 10 of your male colleagues, how come they didn't come? There's nothing, I don't find that to be bad at all. In fact, I would like to know why they didn't think that this was important. Because, again, I do the math. 320 million against 1.3 billion. We better get the best of every American that we can. Go out and ask them. I don't know how you make it more attractive. It should be already. People get caught up in their day-to-day life, but that's a really weak excuse. Go ask your peers, your male peers, why they didn't come. That's the best I can do. Sorry.
I love it.